Whoa.
To push ourselves as composers. And what I teach my students is take what you know and then work with it. Don't try and extend beyond something you can't do. Look, I'm a drummer. I'm a percussionist. Could you tell by all those drums behind me? And so,
Wow.
you know, I make my own mallets, okay? And I have my own techniques of playing instruments, and I apply them to stringed instruments. I have a huge collection in my living room of string instruments, and I've made a huge sample library of me playing these stringed instruments with blast sticks, with brushes, with really small, tiny metal mallets. And I'm making these really cool round robin contact sample patches. Nobody else has them. I'm the only one who has them, and they're mine. And they come from my drumming skills.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm using these in my composition to gain a creative, competitive edge.
Right.
So you've got to figure out how to do that if you're a piano player, or if you're a cellist, or if
Mm-hmm.
you're a trumpeter. Find a way to take what you know, right? Look, the best example of this is Miles Davis. You know, he technically was not a brilliant trumpeter. He couldn't hit high notes. He couldn't play particularly fast. So what did he do? He made cool jazz. He made that smooth in the middle, you know, cool jazz, right? And it was
Mm-hmm.
all about tone for him, tone and texture and composition. So he went into the world. This is what made Beethoven the genius he is. He was always known as the greatest pianist in Europe and the greatest improviser, and not as the greatest composer. He lost his hearing. He's like, well, all I can do now is write music. Can't play anymore.
Right.
And that's why his symphonies matured. The more deaf he became, the better his symphonies became, because he was less and less. I mean, that's my theory. Again, I wasn't there, you know, so I don't know. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
anyway, are
But
there other questions you want to
yeah,
specifically ask me? Because
no,
I,
yeah,
I
I
tend
want
to go on. You have to cut me off sometimes because I'll just go on and on and on.
to. I don't like to interrupt, especially when it's all interesting, which it is.
All right. Well,
Um,
what's your next question?
well, just to finish on the temp score thing, is it ever
Yeah,
useful
right.
for just to make sure you're on the same page as a client? Say you put in time into something and they say, "Oh no, that's not what I was imagining at all." You know.
Yeah, no, here. Okay, so look, there are creative suggestions that happen in a spotting session with a director. Okay. So, you know, whenever I've scored it, I've only done 2 features. Okay. But on both features, you know, there was a long discussion. Well, the first one, no, actually, that's a oh man, you want to hear a story about a film? Not now, later, maybe if we have time. But the second director I worked with, there was a very long, like we would take walks, we would talk for hours, and we really bonded, and we talked about our favorite music, and we would take these long walks, and, you know, we would just talk about it, and we'd sit with our phones, and, you know, she would send me a link and she'd be like, what do you think of this? And I'd be like, oh my God, that's so cool. What do you think of this? And I'd send her back a link and she'd be like, now I understand what you mean. But what if we also did this? And so it was a collaborative,
Mm.
and this was beautiful. And it led to some of the most beautiful music I've ever written in my whole career,
Which film is
because
this?
it
Is
was
it Rosa?
Rosa. Yeah,
I,
exactly. Yeah. And I wrote a beautiful theme. Oh my God. It's really, I mean, it really is. It was a wonderful, wonderful soundtrack, Rosa.
mm,
So I'm really proud of that soundtrack. Anyway, the point is, you know, the director was fantastic, you know, and it was a collaboration, you know, musical collaboration, you know. And when I wrote my first ideas about what I thought before even a frame was shot, you know, she literally just stood up and hugged me and, you know, just like cried in my arms and said, you understand my movie, you know. And I'm like,
okay.
well, I'm certainly trying to. And this
Okay.
is before the shoot even began. So
Right.
so that is very different than, you know, sticking a piece of music into a game and then working. Well, it happened, you know, I did a trailer for a game called Lost Socks, and they didn't have the rights to the music, and so they wanted me to write the music, and they explained and described what they want, and they said, you know, can you come up with something like that? And I was like, sure. And they sent me a few YouTube links, again, as reference. So I wrote the track, and I wrote it at 138 BPM because they wanted something upbeat and snappy. And what they failed to tell me was, or maybe they did. I can't remember how this all happened, but the point is they did all the editing to the song that was in 120 BPM.
Oh.
And they said to me, can you take this piece of music and just make it 120 BPM? And I said, no.
Oh.
I said, I can't. I said, but what I can do is I can write you a new piece of music in 120 BPM. And I did. And it was actually better than the first one. So, sometimes it can be good. Sometimes it can be bad, but mostly I think it's bad, especially when an editor and a director are, cutting a film to temp to get an idea of the flow of their edits, and they're doing it to the Gladiator soundtrack. Well, geez, man, they get attached to it, and then no matter what you write, it's wrong. It's dangerous.
Yeah, but from what that story you told, it sounds like getting on board as early as possible is a good thing, and
it's a good thing.
Being in the same place as the client is a good thing.
Absolutely.
Having the one-to-one personal contact, and then maybe using reference tracks to establish your palette, maybe your sonic palettes or ideas, but not, as you say, not syncing it to the picture.
You see, I'll explain something like that is important to understand in every single creative endeavor that becomes monetized. In any, let's just take a standard feature film. There's always a fight, epic battle between producer and director. Okay. Because you have to understand, the director is an artist. He or she wants to make a piece of art. Okay. And the producer, he or she wants to make a product that will sell and fill seats in a movie theater. So the producer and the director fight for the most important thing in the film, which is called final cut, right? So who gets final cut? Does the producer decide final cut, or does the director? And the producer is the one who signs the paychecks and releases the money to pay the director. But the director has the creative power to make the movie successful or not. So it's an epic struggle between who gets final cut. So, it is, so the producer wants to make money. So hire the cheaper composer, who cares? Throw some temp music in, have them, just imitate and copy it. Let's get it done. Whereas a game I'm working on right now, the director of the game is so hands-on. He even wants to write. He's wants to sing on some of the tracks. And so it's a joy to work with a guy like this, because he doesn't care about the money. He wants to make great art. And I think that at the end of the day, I'm an artist. I want to work with other artists. I don't want to work with, now, granted, I'm also a producer. I'm producing 2 studio albums right now, in fact. So I know what I have to do as a producer, but I always protect the integrity of the artist. And I think that is really a producer's job. So a producer's job in a film should be to protect the director and make the director feel safe and comfortable in their creativity and their decision-making process. So I think temp music, as far as it goes, it is a double-edged sword. I think it's way better to have a collaborative, artistic union between the composer and the director. And
I have heard horror stories where the composer, the director is delighted with the composer's work, and you think it's all signed, sealed, delivered, but then the producer comes in at the end and says, no, I don't like it.
Oh, yes. And you want to know what happened to me on my first feature? I'll tell you the most short version I can. I worked with the producer. The producer adored my music. Okay. And so I worked with the producer for 8 months on the soundtrack, and it was incredible. And it's because the story, I'm telling you the long version. So short version, the directors hated it. So it was 8 months of work just down the drain.
Oh, the
And
producers loved it. The directors
and
didn't.
the directors hated it. Yeah. And, you know, basically the producer enforced and said, well, I'm signing your check. So we're going with this music. You know, work with it if you like it or not. They threatened to quit. That's how much they hated the music. Yeah.
Wow. But why were
And
you
listen,
working with the producer and not the director? Because usually it's the other way around.
Right. Because this producer is the one that signed me onto the film. This was the producer that really, really adored my music. And it was one of the reasons I actually moved to Italy, because they said, look, we can do several films, but we would like to have you here. You know, would you move to Italy? And I was like, sure. Anyway, so yeah, so and it was everybody at that production company that really, they all adored my music and they all loved what I was writing. But then the directors hated it. There were two directors. It was a team, and it's, you know, they were sort of this, you know, avant-garde, radical chic, minimalist shit music, I call it. Sorry. I mean, it really is. It's just god awful trash, you know, basically like, you know, throw a carton of eggs on your MIDI controller with like a sample of like chickens screaming, and, you know, make some kinetic energy between them trapped in sound, record it with a microphone, and then, you know, put it in your film. Like, it's garbage, you know? And this is my problem, is that, look, if a guy like Picasso spends his entire life's journey developing himself and going through multiple periods as an artist, and then simply, he was obsessed with bulls and bullfighting. And one of my favorite works of his is he just took a bicycle seat and the handlebars and just glued the handlebars on top of the bicycle seat, and boom, you got a bull. One of his most famous works. And I love it because it's 100% pure art. Now, is it technically brilliant? No. Is it a technical achievement in the arts? No. But is it the work of a true artist? Yes. Because true artists understand abstraction, and more importantly, they know how to express themselves through any medium, you know? So, and that's what he did. He just took a bicycle and made a bull out of it. And so that's fine. But like, there's too many young artists who watch these overly romanticized Hollywood portrayals of artists and their lives, you know, thinking that this is how artists live. And then they try to be art. You know, there are people who are in love with the idea of being an artist rather than actually creating art. They love the idea of being an artist more than they actually are an artist. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so, and I think that there's a lot of people out there like that, and it's fine. It's totally fine. But, you know, understand that you're not cutting yourself off from the entire world and locking yourself in a room and literally working, you know, 120 hours a week, obsessed. You don't give a fuck about parties or socializing or being in a scene because you only care about one thing, your art. That's what an artist does. And so if an artist takes that path and that journey and then arrives at a handlebar on a bicycle seat, so be it. But you don't get to do that and then think you're an artist, you know?